3 bone-chilling true Stalker-Ex tales that haunt you forever. You won't believe what happens. In the heart of suburbia, Jessica felt that thrill of freedom every time she stepped off her porch. But one late night, that freedom became her greatest vulnerability. As shadows danced in the streetlights, a chilling whisper slithered through the air. "I know where you are." The voice echoed in her mind, pulsating with eerie recognition. Panic seized her heart. Was it a ghost? A deranged ex? The night swallowed her sanity, inch by inch. Just weeks before, she'd broken things off with Mark, a charismatic guy who turned dark the moment the sun set. Friends warned her, but she thought love would tame him. It didn't. Then, the phone calls started. Muffled voices in the dead of night, his laughter oozing through the receiver, making her skin crawl. She hung up, shaking. Was he really watching her now? Then came the first strange element. A note slipped under her door, written in jagged letters, "You'll regret leaving me." Each promise of retribution tightened her chest, but there was more. Odd coincidences, like the time her coffee shop was mysteriously out of her favorite drink, the barista claiming, "Someone ordered it right before you." Each event unfolded like a layer of a terrifying onion, revealing the stalker underneath. As Jessica fought to feel safe, she noticed him lurking. He was always there, yet never there behind a tree, a parked car, some distant alley. Just watching. She could feel the weight of his gaze, cold and penetrating. It made her stomach twist, a lump forming in her throat, rage mixing with fear. Friends urged her to alert the police, but could they really do anything? She couldn't shake the feeling that no one would believe her. Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The nights grew longer. Dread wrapped around her like a winter coat, heavy and suffocating. One stormy evening, she returned home to find her front door ajar, her heart racing like a wild animal. Who had been inside? The smell of rain mixed with the scent of something almost sweet, plastering fear onto her skin. But it was the shadow that made her scream. Leaning against her bedroom window, arms crossed, was no other than Mark. Grinning like a maniac, he simply said, "I told you, I'm never letting you go." Sweat dripped down her spine as the world around her blurred. This couldn't be happening. She stumbled back, phone shaking in her hands. What would she do? Call the police? Hide? His laugh echoed like thunder, and she wasn't sure if she was dreaming or awake. Would she make it through the night? The sound of his breath filled the air. She knew then, the nightmare was only just beginning. Panic surged through Jessica's veins like a wildfire. She felt frozen, her legs refusing to move, as if the fear had solidified her into place. Mark's smirk twisted her stomach in knots. He seemed to relish her terror, and the darkness outside echoed with his chilling laughter, wrapping around her like a noose. "Why are you doing this?" She finally croaked, her voice barely a whisper. "Because you belong to me, Jess," he responded, stepping closer. "You made me wait long enough." Every instinct urged her to bolt, but shock pinned her down. She glanced toward the door, her escape route. Could she make it? Suddenly, with a swift motion, Mark whipped out a phone from his pocket, snapping a photo of her with a flick of his wrist. "This is just the first of many," he said, as if confirming her worst fears. The moment felt surreal, but the threat was all too real. She had to think. "You need help, Mark," she managed, her voice steadier now, desperation filling her words. "This isn't love. It's obsession. You're sick." Mark laughed again, and it was a horrible sound, like knives scraping against glass. Sick? No, sweetie. This is far beyond love. This is destiny. As he moved, a flash of pure instinct exploded. Jessica lunged towards her phone on the bedside table. She needed to call for help, urgently. With movement fueled by adrenaline, she dashed past him, her heart hammering with a raw determination. But he was faster. He caught her arm, yanking her back. You think the police can save you? They'll just laugh at your pretty little stories. No one believes women like you. His eyes burned with madness, and she felt herself slipping away, losing the ground beneath her feet. Jessica took a deep breath, focusing on one thought: survival. With a wild twist, she freed her arm from his grasp, launching herself towards the window. She knew the drop wouldn't save her. It might hurt, but it was a risk she had to take. With one swift, desperate motion, she kicked the screen and leaped out into the wild night. The air rushed past her, and the ground approached faster than she anticipated. A jarring thud reverberated through her body as she hit the grass. Pain shot through her ankle, but she didn't let it stop her. Just as she rolled to her knees, she heard Mark's furious roar from inside the house, erupting like a storm. You think you can run? The words boomed through the night, each syllable dripping with rage. He was storming toward the window, silhouetted against the dim light. Jessica struggled to her feet, adrenaline firing through her, driving her to flee deeper into the shadows of the neighborhood. She headed toward the park, where thick trees could provide some cover, pulse racing. Her ankle throbbed, but the fear of Mark's wrath propelled her forward. As she glanced behind her, she could see him, a dark figure slicing through the night with a relentless fury. His laughter, echoing like a haunting melody, wrapped around her, paralyzing her with dread. Jessica sprinted, heart pounding a frantic rhythm in her ears, praying for escape. But she was unaware of the true depth of Mark's insanity. She wouldn't realize how far he would go until it was too late. Then, a flash of movement caught her eye. In the depths of the park, shadows flickered. Were there others lurking? What was waiting just beyond the trees? The night held its breath as Jessica dove into the blackness ahead. The uncertainty consumed her. Had she truly escaped her nightmare, or was it only beginning? The chill of the night enveloped Jessica as she sprinted into the park, her heart roaring in her ears. The shadows around her seemed alive, pulsating with secrets and fear. Each step was a risk, the damp grass beneath her giving way to unseen dangers. The trees twisted, their branches stretched out like twisted fingers, as if trying to grab her and pull her into their dark embrace. Breathless, she glanced over her shoulder. Mark's figure was now a phantom among the trees, his manic laughter echoing off the trunks. Her ankle throbbed painfully, sending shockwaves of reality crashing through her mind. Every fiber of her being screamed to escape him, but the questions clawed at her. Was this true freedom, or just another trap laid in the murky shadows? Careful not to make a sound, Jessica stumbled deeper into the park, moving quietly alongside the bark of a massive oak tree. She pressed herself against it, willing her racing heart to slow. She needed a solid plan to ensure she wouldn't just wind up as another ghost story in this dark night. In her frantic search for a safe spot, she spotted a flickering light beyond the grove of trees. Was it a lamp? Or perhaps someone else in the park? Hope danced cautiously in her chest. Maybe help was just a few yards away. But could she trust it? Steeling herself, Jessica edged toward the light cautiously. The shadows whispered around her, their voices almost taunting, heightening the tension in the air. The laughter faded behind her, replaced by the quiet rustle of leaves. Every sense tingling, she crept towards the beacon. As she drew closer, the light burst into focus. It was coming from a small, weathered gazebo tucked away in a clearing. Relief flooded through her, but dread lingered, swirling like mist. She stepped cautiously into the clearing, peeking inside the structure. The gazebo was empty but illuminated by a flickering lantern. Tattered benches told of forgotten whispers, the place reeked of abandonment and stories unsolved. Heart pounding, she considered sheltering within. But before she could step inside, she heard scratching quiet but imminent. Her heart dropped, and she ducked low, pressing herself against the gazebo's wooden post as she spotted a figure emerging from the shadows. A tall man stepped forward, eyes glowing in the faint light. His hair was long and unkempt, his shirt stained and torn. He looked wild, like he'd slipped through the seams of sanity. "Help me," he rasped, voice trembling. The desperation in his words made her shiver, but the terror of her own predicament kept her rooted. "What do you want?" Jessica's voice came out sharper than she'd intended. "Please." He took a step closer, eyes darting around. "He's coming. I know him, the one who hunts at night. He'll take you too." Jessica's breath caught. Was she more afraid of the stranger or Mark, who could be racing toward her even now? "Stay away from me," she shouted, panic growing. She took a step backward, feeling the edge of the gazebo. Suddenly, the laughter echoed again, darker, nearer. Mark's voice sent icy prickles down her spine. "Jessica! You can't run from destiny." The man's crazed expression only deepened her fear. "You have to go. He'll tear you apart." Jessica's world narrowed. She had to choose, trust the deranged stranger or confront the monster she feared most. Torn between fleeing and grappling with an unpredictable ally, her thoughts raced. As Mark's presence loomed ever closer, the moment of choice came crashing down on Jessica. Would she gamble on the twisted tales of this madman or face the predator hunting her? The night crackled around her, brimming with dread and the sharp edge of impending horror. The stakes had never been higher. In the depths of her heart, a chilling question loomed: what price was she willing to pay for survival? Adrenaline surged through Jessica as she faced the stranger. She instinctively weighed her options. Would she take the risk of trusting an unstable man, or would she step into Mark's path, a move that could seal her fate? Sweat dripped down her temples, and the taste of fear was bitter in her mouth. "Tell me," she hissed, her eyes darting around, searching the darkness for any sign of Mark. "What do you know?" He leaned closer, desperation etched into his wild features. "He's not just playing a game. He'll make you suffer first. You have to run. You have to." But the words were cut off by a rustling in the thicket. Jessica's heart leaped into her throat as she noticed the shadows shift. The laughter rang through the air again, chilling her to the bone. Without thinking, she bolted towards the man, seeking some semblance of safety. As she reached the gazebo, she grabbed his arm. "We need to hide. Now." He hesitated, glancing over her shoulder, eyes wide with dread. "He'll find you. He always finds you. You're marked." "Marked?" The word sent a shiver down her spine, layering her fear with confusion. Were her choices not just life or death, but elements of a twisted game? Before she could protest further, a crash echoed from the trees behind her, piercing through the tension-filled air. Mark's silhouette broke through the foliage, his figure grotesquely lit by the moonlight. Shadows cloaked his face, but she could feel the madness radiating from him like heat from the pavement. "There you are, Jessica. You can't hide forever." His laughter was a weapon, slashing through the silence. The man beside her yanked his arm free, stepping back. "We have to go. Now." He turned, darting toward the opposite side of the gazebo, urging her to follow. But her legs felt like lead. "Where?" The word escaped her lips as Mark closed in. "Anywhere but here." He grabbed her wrist, pulling her along. They stumbled out of the gazebo, glancing back at Mark, whose eyes glittered with a mix of amusement and malice. "Run, little mice. The hunt is on." The raw energy of fear fueled their feet as they raced deeper into the park. The trees closed in around them, branches clawing at skin and clothing. Jessica gasped for breath, her ankles still protesting with every step. It was difficult to keep her focus, the oppressive darkness clawed at her sanity. "What do you know about him?" she shouted, voice strained and urgent. The stranger's expression reflected the wild depths of his mind. "He thrives on fear. It gives him strength. You can't show him weakness, you have to fight back." A flash of moonlight illuminated his face, revealing the scars of battles fought, both internal and external. The edges of reality felt brittle, breaking under the weight of their fears. But even amid the chaos, snippets of clarity pierced through Jessica's thoughts. "You said I was marked. What did you mean?" The man glanced sideways, eyes darting with nervous energy. "It means he has chosen you, to be his next victim. He wants your fear, your pain, it feeds him." Before she could process his words, a shrill scream echoed through the park, a sound of raw terror that sent fresh waves of dread coursing through her veins. It wasn't just a scream, it was a cry of hopelessness that resonated with her own fate. "What was that?" she breathed, heart racing even faster. His grip tightened on her hand. "We need to keep moving. It's not just you he's after." But horror clawed at her thoughts. What if their fate was entwined with that scream? Every moment felt like a countdown. The echo of that voice mingled with Mark's laughter, pulling them into a web they might never escape. Jessica swallowed hard, resolute. "Then we'll fight him together. We're not going to be his prey." But as they plunged deeper into the shadows, the weight of their decision settled heavily on them. Each choice could either lead to salvation or plunge them deeper into despair. What awaited them in this twisted game of survival? Would they find a way to outsmart the darkness, or was their fate already sealed? Jessica's breath came in rapid bursts as she and the stranger veered off the main path, ducking under low-hanging branches that scratched her cheeks like fingers. The scream had shattered her resolve, confidence replaced by primal fear. The trees loomed overhead, and each gust of wind seemed to carry Mark's taunting laughter. "Why are we going this way?" she gasped, struggling to keep up. The stranger moved like a ghost, both agile and urgent, but she could feel the ground beneath her become more uneven, roots twisting around her ankles like serpents. "Trust me," he yelled back, glancing over his shoulder. "There's a safe spot, but we have to hurry. He could be right behind us." The name Mark echoed in her mind, clawing at her sanity. Who was he really? What did he want from her? The questions burned, but there was no time to dwell. Survival painted every moment in shades of terror. Suddenly, the keeper of their fears appeared at the edge of the clearing, his figure stark against the moonlit backdrop. "There you are," he bellowed, voice dripping with mockery. "Thought you could get away? You should know better, Jessica." Jessica faltered, fear flooding her limbs, but the stranger pulled her onward. "Move. Don't look back." With every frantic step, those words echoed louder in her mind, but doubt gnawed at her insides. How could she move forward when the past loomed so large behind her? They raced into the thicket, branches whipping against her skin, reminding her of the inevitable. Yet, a part of her resisted. She could not just run blindly. "What's your name?" she shouted breathlessly, trying to drag herself from the edge of panic. "Chris," he replied, glancing sideways for just a moment, a flicker of vulnerability amidst the chaos. "And you need to know, I'm not just some random guy. I've seen what he can do." As another crash echoed from the path, Jessica stumbled and caught herself against a tree, her heart hammering in her chest. "What do you mean? Why is he targeting me?" Chris glanced deeper into the shadows, hesitating. "He's obsessed. It's like a twisted game for him. He chooses one person and plays with their life, feeding off their fear. You've triggered something in him." Jessica's mind reeled, piecing the fragments together. She vaguely remembered a troubled relationship with Mark, moments laced with desperation and possessiveness. But this was something far darker than she ever imagined. The deeper shadows seemed to swallow Chris's words, but she caught the urgency in his voice as he tugged her onward. "We can't stop. We have to reach the shelter before a rustle in the bushes stopped them." They froze, hearts in their throats. Mark's mocking laughter carried on the wind, wrapping around them like a noose. "You think you can hide?" he called out, voice dripping with menace. "It's almost too easy." Jessica's instincts kicked in. They dashed across the clearing, but the thud of heavy footsteps echoed behind them, growing louder, closer. Adrenaline coursed through her, she couldn't let fear claim her. "Over there!" Chris shouted, pointing to a dilapidated cabin barely visible through the trees. Its structure leaned precariously, but it promised a temporary refuge. They sprinted, desperation fueling their every step, the cabin looming closer with each heartbeat. As they burst through the door, Chris slammed it shut behind them. Breathing hard, they leaned against the wooden frame, the air thick with dread. The interior was dark and musty, clusters of old furniture casting eerie shadows. Jessica grabbed his arm. "We can't stay here for long. He'll be right behind us." "Let him come," Chris said, defiance sparking in his eyes. "This time, we're ready. We're not just the prey." But Mark's laughter rang through the woods, a cruel symphony that sent chills racing down her spine. The hunt wasn't over, it was just beginning. An ominous creak echoed from above. Jessica's heart raced. "What's upstairs?" Chris's eyes widened, realization dawning. Maybe it's a way to escape, but as he opened the door to the dark basement, a flurry of noise erupted, shadows swirling like a storm. Jessica's gut twisted in fear as she heard a scuttling sound coming from below. What lay in that darkness? Could this cabin hold the key to their survival or the end of it all? The basement door creaked open, revealing a gaping maw of darkness that seemed to swallow the small light filtering through the dusty windows. Jessica stepped back instinctively, dread crawling up her spine. "Chris, maybe we should just know," he interrupted, steel in his voice. "We can't just stand here. We need to find something, anything that can help us." The scuttling grew louder, a chaotic patter that made her skin tingle with terror. Whatever was down there, it was moving fast. Jessica felt her heartbeat quicken, matching the rising tempo of the relentless noise. She instinctively glanced back at the door, fear warring with the desperate need to survive. "Let's check upstairs first," she proposed, hoping to find a window or an escape route, but Chris shook his head, his expression grim. "No time. We'll get trapped if he closes in on us. We have to see what's in the basement." He stepped cautiously down the stairs, the creaking wood echoing in the otherwise suffocating silence. Jessica followed, trepidation gnawing at her gut. The dim light from their flashlight barely illuminated the moldy walls. The air was damp and thick. It smelled stale, like dead leaves and forgotten memories. As they descended, the scuttling stopped. Jessica's breath hitched in her throat, the silence felt heavy, pressing down on her. Chris turned, his eyes locking onto hers. "Do you hear that?" She shook her head, straining to listen. Then, a low growl resonated from the shadows, a sound so primal that it sent shivers across her skin. It pooled in her belly, a heavy dread that made her want to bolt back up the stairs. "We need to go back," she whispered, barely able to muster the courage. But Chris remained still, tension radiating from him as he squinted into the darkness. "Just a little further," he urged, his expression firm. "Stay close to me." They crept deeper, the flashlight beam flickering erratically against the walls. Suddenly, it landed on a figure huddled in the corner, a ragged shape tangled in shadows. Jessica gasped, her heart threatening to explode. Was it a person? "No!" Chris hissed, grabbing her arm and pulling her back. "Get away!" The moment he spoke, the figure lunged, a wild motion that sent Jessica stumbling. She barely steadied herself before the creature emerged from the darkness, its eyes glowing with a strange, unsettling light. It was small, definitely not human, but it moved with unsettling ease, darting left and right like a creature caught in a fever dream. Then, it let out a shriek so piercing that Jessica clamped her hands over her ears. "Run!" Chris shouted, his voice snapping her back to reality. They dashed back up the stairs, their feet pounding against the wooden steps, the basement door slamming shut behind them like a crude alarm bell. But there was no time to breathe. Mark's laughter roared outside, vicious and mocking, sending a jolt of panic through her. They needed to lock the cabin door. They needed to hold on. They needed the cell phone too, but it lay on the table, mocking her like Mark. "Where do we go now?" Jessica panted, scanning the tiny cabin. The windows were their only lifeline, but the shutters were old and warped, offering no solid security against the storm brewing outside. Chris locked the door, then turned to her, face taut with determination and a touch of fear. "There's a crawlspace under the floorboards. I remember seeing it through the cracks. It might lead us to the other side. Or to nowhere," Jessica shot back, growing anxious. "Do you have a better idea?" he challenged, glancing toward the windows as if the very trees outside could respond. She swallowed hard. The past had taught her to trust her instincts, and right now, every instinct screamed for her to run. But running was no longer a choice. Steeling herself, she nodded. "Show me." As they knelt to search for the crawlspace, the laughter outside morphed into a chant, echoing through the trees. "Jessica, Jessica, you can't hide forever." The cabin felt like it was closing in on her, each creak of the floorboards resonating with the darkness that edged closer. They found the loose floorboard, which lifted with a loud pop, creating a narrow opening promising both hope and dread. The laughter swelled, the shadows lengthened. Would they escape, or was this just the beginning of their nightmare? Jessica took a deep breath, gripping Chris's arm. The answer awaited them in the dark. "On 3, Chris whispered, counting down. Would they be ready for whatever lay ahead, or would Mark's nightmare trap them forever? The crawlspace gaped open before them, a looming darkness that smelled of earth and decay. Jessica's heart raced as she peered into the hole. There was barely enough room to crawl, and she imagined centipedes and rats scuttling just out of sight. "Go," Chris urged, his voice a sharp whisper that cut through the swirling panic. "I'll be right behind you." "Are you sure about this?" Jessica's voice quivered. The thought of what might be lurking beneath was haunting, but the laughter of Mark, like the echo of demons, urged her on. "Just do it," Chris insisted, his eyes darting nervously toward the door. Without waiting for her to respond, he nudged her forward. With a hesitant breath, Jessica crawled into the darkness. The cramped space caused her pulse to leap. She could barely move, the walls were close enough to brush against her arms. She felt cold dirt under her fingertips, gritty and clinging. A tiny beam from their flashlight flickered behind her, and she could hear Chris hurrying to follow. The further they crawled, the more the air turned stale, stinging her lungs with each ragged breath. There was no light to guide them. Just silence and fear. What if they were leading themselves into an even greater nightmare? The thought twisted in her mind. "Jessica," Chris whispered from behind her, his voice strained, "you okay?" "I'm fine," she shot back, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her. Gritting her teeth, she pressed on. They moved forward, the sound of her heartbeat drumming in her ears mingling with Chris's soft pants behind her. At last, they reached an end. Jessica's flashlight skittered over a wall of earth. "What now?" she whispered, panic rising again. "I think there might be a way out." Chris's fingers brushed against a rough surface, and she could hear the scraping of nails against wood. The sound of a latch clicking echoed in the cramped space. Then, the world erupted around them. Lights flashed from above, beams of harsh, unforgiving brightness that sliced through the darkness above them. The scuttling returned, louder now, a full orchestra of disarray, and there, just above them, stood a silhouette, a figure with the unmistakable shape of Mark. "I knew you'd run," he cackled, his voice dripping malice. "Did you think I wouldn't find you?" How quaint. Jessica's heart sank. Chris! She hissed, but the walls pressed in too tightly, trapping her voice. There was nowhere to hide. They were trapped. On the count of 3, we pushed through. Chris's voice came, strong, despite the fear swirling around them. 1-2 before Chris could finish, the floor above splintered as Mark dropped something heavy on the ground just above them. Dust and dirt rained down, thickening the air and choking her. 3. They shouted simultaneously, both pushing against the wall. The surface cracked and shifted, the wood splintering under their combined force. But before they could break free, the laughter transformed into a fierce growl, something monstrous echoing from the shadows. Then, silence, thick, oppressive silence. Jessica's chest tightened painfully, the darkness swallowing everything. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through her arm as something clamped down hard. She felt Chris pull back. "What the hell is that?" he cried out. It got me." She gasped, forcing herself to focus as she struggled against the invisible grip. A chill coursed through her body, leaving her motionless with terror. "Jessica! Hold on!" Chris shouted, but his voice was growing distant, swallowed by the darkness and cacophony of laughter above. As she fought to break free, Jessica's mind raced. She had to escape. She had to warn him. But was it already too late? They had ventured deep into the unknown, a realm where nightmares came alive. "Chris!" She cried out, desperation driving her voice. All the while, a primal fear gnawed at her gut. Could they make it out alive, or had their fate already been sealed? The shadows shifted, and a low growl resounded again, creeping closer. What awaited them in the darkness? Time was slipping through her fingers like sand, and she could feel it. The end was nearing. The grip around Jessica's arm tightened, a cold, unyielding force that sent electric shocks of fear racing through her veins. Panic clawed at her throat as she gasped for breath, the dust from above mixing with the dirt beneath her, filling her lungs and fogging her thoughts. "Chris!" she cried, her voice cracking against the stifling darkness. "Keep it together!" He shouted back, but she could hear the tremor in his voice. He was scared, terrified. The reality of their precarious situation sank in like lead. They were trapped, caught beneath an ancient wooden floor, while something unspeakable lurked just overhead, or worse, below. The growl came again, low and guttural, vibrating through the ground and settling deep in her bones. Jessica's heart raced. She felt the invisible grip loosen just a fraction, but still, she couldn't break free. Something was lurking there, hidden in the cavern of shadows, and it was hungry. "Listen to me," Chris urged, his voice low but steady. "We need to find a way out. Look for anything we can use." She directed her flashlight, the beam trembling, catching fleeting glimpses of the earth and the sparse wood surrounding them. Fear coated her thoughts, but desperation ignited a spark of determination. She began to claw at the wall, her nails scratching against the rough, damp surface, torn between the urge to flee and the need to stay together. Then, without warning, the growl morphed into a series of high-pitched shrieks, haunting and guttural. A flash of movement darted just beyond the faint beam of light, vanishing before she could tell what it was. Jessica froze, her breath caught in her throat. "Chris, did you see that?" she whispered, her voice shaky. "Yeah," he replied, urgency threading through his whisper. "We need to keep moving. There has to be another way out of here." But as they worked, the pressure against her arm returned, this time accompanied by a chilling laugh that echoed in the confined space. It was Mark's unmistakable voice, weaving into the sounds of their struggle. "Oh, how the tables turn!" he cackled from above, his delight palpable. "You wanted an adventure, didn't you? How about a little game of hide and seek?" A wave of dread washed over Jessica. Time was slipping away, but beneath the panic, a flicker of anger ignited. This was more than a game. This was survival. With each scrape of her nails against the wood, she felt herself focus. A faint light flickered in the distance, the dim glow reflecting off something metal tangled in the dirt. "Chris! Over there!" she shouted, her voice echoing in the dark. "Just a few more pushes." Chris encouraged, his desperation heightening her resolve. They pressed their shoulders against the wall, pushing with all their might. Crack! A splintering sound erupted from above as another heavy object crashed down. Dust billowed like smoke, filling the air and forcing them both to cough. "Go, go, go!" Chris urged. "We're almost through." He pushed harder as Jessica directed her beam to find the object. The glint caught her eye, a rusted metal tool, hidden in the earth. She grabbed it, her fingers closing around the cold handle. It felt heavy, but familiar, the weight of an instrument that could save them, or perhaps make them the monsters of their own story. The oppressive darkness began to shift. The growls were growing louder, closer. Something was coming, and they wouldn't have much time. "Chris, now. We have to break through." She glanced at him, raw determination in her eyes. With renewed adrenaline, they pushed again, fingers gripping the edges of that crude wooden barrier, relying on hope and desperation. Just as another growl rattled the very foundation of their hiding place, they felt the wall yield beneath their collective weight. Crack! The wood splintered violently, flinging them into a blinding light. For a fleeting moment, Jessica thought they had escaped, but the chaos that awaited them outside was nothing she could have ever imagined. The horizon was torn apart, the sky swarmed with clouds, dark and menacing. A deep chill swept over her, and there, among the shadows, figures moved, shifting in and out of the light, waiting. Jessica had only a split second to assess what was truly unfolding before them, a reality far more horrifying than the crawlspace they had just escaped. "Run!" she screamed as realization sank in, but Mark's laughter cut through the air, promising that game was far from over. "Catch you on the flip side." And with that, the figures advanced, the darkness pulling them in like a tide. Could they truly escape this new nightmare, or would they find themselves ensnared in a perilous game of survival? The answer loomed larger than life, an impending storm threatening to consume them whole. The ground trembled beneath Jessica's feet as she stumbled from the point where they broke through. Panic turned to dread as darkness seemed to envelop the surroundings, leaving her disoriented. She blinked against the blinding light, her heart pounding against her ribs like a desperate warning bell. "Where are they?" Chris gasped, scanning the chaos around them. There were no easy answers, just shadows dancing along the edges of her vision, mingled with the cries of unseen entities. The chilling laughter echoed again, swirling around them like venomous smoke. "Mark! Let us go!" Jessica screamed, her voice lost in the thunderous roars that responded. But he wasn't alone. Slinking through the shadows were twisted, grotesque figures with eyes that glimmered like shards of glass against the pitiless sky. Each one bore an unmistakable hunger, a grotesque need that sent shivers of primal fear coursing through her veins. "Run!" Chris shouted, grabbing her arm. "We have to get to that tree line." They sprinted, the ground vibrating under their feet as the figures crept closer, their forms evolving with every frantic step. Quick glances backward lifted terror in Jessica's throat. The figures moved with a sickly grace, closing the distance faster than she could breathe. What were those things? She cried, glancing at Chris as they veered toward a dense cluster of trees. "No idea," he shouted, pushing her onward. "But I don't want to find out." Suddenly, a lightning strike illuminated their path, momentarily revealing that they weren't just shadows. They wore human semblances but distorted and twisted, grotesque parodies of reality, eyes hollow and grinning mouths stretched wide. Ululations of laughter pierced the air, mocking their plight, and freezing them in place for an agonizing moment. "Keep running. Don't look back," Chris urged, yanking her forward just as one of the figures lunged. Jessica felt the rush of air as it missed them, its bony fingers brushing her jacket. Bursting through the underbrush, they reached the tree line, breaths ragged and shallow. Here, away from the open ground, the thick trunks felt oddly comforting, encasing them like walls in a fortress. But the safety was fleeting, the laughter grew louder, the figures following them, relentless and insatiable. "Climb!" she shouted, spotting a massive branch overhead. Chris nodded, and with adrenaline surging, they scaled the tree, climbing higher and higher until their legs trembled from the effort. They settled on a thick branch, clinging tightly to the rough bark as they peered down. "Where did they go?" Chris whispered, scanning the dark ground below. The figures circled the base of the tree, their eyes glinting like predatory animals hunting for prey. They seemed to be waiting for them to make the next move. Panic surged through Jessica as she tried to catch her breath. "What do we do now?" Her voice cracked, panic gripping her soul. But just then, Mark's eerie laughter rang out once more through the branches. "You can't hide forever. This is just the beginning of the fun." The air was thick with dread. A chill wrapped around them like a vice, and Jessica squeezed her eyes shut, gripping Chris's hand tightly. In that moment, the darkness felt alive, pulsing with an energy that promised horror. Then, she heard a soft thud, followed by a creaking noise, like the tree bending under an unseen weight. She opened her eyes just in time to see one of the figures leap up, grasping the branch where they were perched, its twisted smile glowing bright in the dim light. "Run!" Chris yelled, as the creature lunged higher, claws reaching for them. Could they escape the clutches of their tormentors, or were they destined to become the next chapter in Mark's sinister game? The true nature of their nightmare was just about to unfold. Adrenaline surged through Jessica as she watched the grotesque figure clawing its way up the tree. The air felt electric with fear, every heartbeat drumming loudly in her ears. "Climb higher," Chris urged, his voice barely louder than a whisper. They scrambled upwards, limbs shaking, gasping for breath. But the terror didn't relent. The figure above them lurked like a predator, its hollow eyes fixed intently onto Jessica. It shrieked, a sound that broke the night and filled her with deep dread. "We need weapons," she exclaimed, desperation creeping into her voice. She fumbled in her pocket, fingers running against the cold metal tool she had grabbed from the basement. Chris glanced at her, understanding igniting in his eyes. "One of us needs to distract it while the other goes for the branch." A surge of resolve swept through her. "I will do it," Jessica insisted, even as doubt flickered in her gut. She was terrified, but she would not let Mark's madness consume her. "You create an opening for me." He nodded, though uncertainty shadowed his features. The figure climbed higher, monstrous fingers clutching for Jessica, driven by total malice. "You think this tree can protect you?" it hissed, taunting both of them with a twisted grin. As it lunged, Chris leaped into action, throwing loose branches down toward it. "Hey! Down here!" he yelled, waving his arms wildly. The creature turned, momentarily distracted. "Now!" Jessica shouted, feeling rage coursing through her veins. With a fierce push, she slid herself off the branch, dropping down between Chris and the figure. Her heart pounded, she swung the metal object wildly, connecting hard against the fiend's arm. The creature shrieked, pulling back in response, surprised by the fierce retaliation. "Get up! Now!" Chris's voice tore through her resolve. Jessica couldn't waste a second on fear. She turned and climbed back up, adrenaline granting her a boost of strength as she and Chris ascended together. Only, Mark's laughter filled the air again, sly and taunting, echoing around the trees. "You think you're safe? This is my realm." They finally reached a higher branch, panting heavily, trying to summon enough courage to push forward. The laughter sent icy fingers along her spine. "He's watching us," she murmured, sweat beading on her forehead. "Not for long," Chris declared, determination sharpening his tone. They looked down. The creatures had momentarily retreated, confused, but they knew they wouldn't stay away for long. "What do we do, Chris?" Jessica felt her heart drop at the thought of being outsmarted again. We face him. Together. Chris's eyes blazed with defiance, igniting something deep within her. We are not victims. We are not his pawns. As if in response, the ground shuddered as figures began circling the base of the tree again. You think bravery will save you? Look at your world, it's crumbling around you. Mark's voice cut through the air, echoing through the canopy surrounding them. Jessica felt the bile rise in her throat. I won't let you take me. She yelled, swinging the metal tool. We will fight. Just then, the figures lunged upward, scrambling after them again, but fear had transformed into anger. They were no longer prey, they were warriors. Jessica kicked hard at one of the creatures, sending it tumbling backward. Come on. Chris urged, his hand gripping hers, pulling her toward a wide branch. We can jump to that tree. With a loud roar, Mark surged forward, face twisted into a horrifying mask of rage. You can't escape your fate. Watch us. Jessica shouted defiantly as she leapt. Chris followed, their hearts racing, barely avoiding the monstrous claws reaching for them. They landed safely on the adjacent tree, but it was unsteady, branches swaying precariously. We need to find a way down. Chris called out urgently. Jessica could feel the weight of the chase, the panic forcing them to push through. The creatures were regrouping below, their eyes glimmering with a predatory hunger. Climb down, but don't let them see you, Jessica commanded, adrenaline screaming in her ears. Okay, Chris. Acquiesced, determination rushing through him. They made the descent slowly, crouching low, moving carefully from limb to limb. But chaos erupted overhead. Mark's familiar laughter crescendoed, filled with rage. You're mine. You can't escape. As they hit the ground, Jessica felt her lungs tighten. The creatures lunged, but the moment felt surreal. The fire of survival ignited within her. Together. She yelled, feeling a newfound resolve. They turned toward the gathering horrors. Each beast stared back, venomous eyes and sharp claws poised to pounce. Let us end this. She shouted, gripping the metal tool tightly. As the first creature lunged, Jessica met it head-on, swinging fiercely while Chris moved alongside her. It was chaos, shadows and screams filling the air. But as they fought together, something incredible happened. With each breath, fear turned to strength, and they began to push back. The creatures faltered, uncertainty creeping into their movements. With a surge of courage, they rallied together, Chris and Jessica's synchronized attacks driving the creatures into an unfocused chaos. Get away from us! They cried, pushing further into the fray. As daylight began to break against the horizon, Mark's laughter dimmed. You can't win. He screamed, but the sounds of his deranged insanity began to fade. His power waned. With a final ferocious swing, Jessica struck down the last figure, the haunting shriek transforming into silence. Together, they faced Mark, who stood defeated amongst the swirling darkness. Your game is over. She shouted, adrenaline still thrumming in her veins. For the first time, a flicker of fear crossed his face. No. You. But behind them, the dawn broke, a brilliant light washing over the nightmare. No more nightmares, Mark. Jessica declared, and with one last push, they lunged together at the source of the darkness, breaking free into the soft morning light. As sunlight embraced them, the horrific shadows receded. The grip of terror finally loosened its hold. Exhausted but victorious, Jessica turned to Chris, who beamed back at her, alive with relief. We did it, he whispered, bewildered with joy. They stood, hand in hand, finally free. No longer haunted, they embraced the light, knowing their fight was over. They could walk away, stronger and more alive than they had ever been. Now they only had to face what lay ahead. And for the first time in forever, Jessica felt a weight lift. The darkness was behind her, and the dawn welcomed their new beginning. But as they turned to leave, a chilling wind whispered through the trees. I'll be back. Mark's voice echoed in the distance before fading into the silence of the now clear morning, leaving space for hope. It was time to move on together, forward into the life they'd almost lost. And don't you dare forget, friends. You need to subscribe immediately so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, because every bit helps. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild adventure. And listen closely, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support makes all the difference.